served who are in law enforcement and police officers in 3 different departments. I know full well the commitment that you all do each and every day, but I also know the commitment that your family makes because they certainly worry about you each and every day and know that the job you're doing is a dangerous job, but a necessary job if we're to keep our community safe. Yonkers, and being a mayor of Yonkers, one of the areas that I love the fact that we have such a great department. And to our crew that just got that award, thank you, congratulations again. It is one of the finest departments in America. I'm especially excited to get up here and speak about the Boss of the Year Award. And tonight I get to introduce Commissioner Gardner, Chuck Gardner, who this year will be the recipient of the New York State Shield's Boss of the Year Award. I appointed Chuck as Commissioner of the Yonkers Police Department in January 2012, and as a 33-year member of the Yonkers Police Department, Commissioner Gardner rose through the ranks, advancing through a series of progressively responsible positions in numerous commands and divisions. During his career, he has served as a commanding officer in all 3 of the department's bureaus, which included the Support Services, Investigations, and Field Services Bureau. Commissioner Gardner was born and raised right in the city of Yonkers, actually born and raised in pretty much the same neighborhood. He attended local schools and also graduated the same high school I graduated from, our alma mater, Sacred Heart High School. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from Iona College, a Master's degree in Public Administration from Marist College, and has completed numerous law enforcement related courses, too numerous for me to start announcing here, so I'm not going to do that. Commissioner Gardner is the recipient of 14 awards and certificates. A founding member of the department's Honor Color Guard, implemented the department's first, the City Stat Program, implemented the YPD's first homeless outreach team, and participated in the formation of the department's truancy reduction and sex offender monitoring programs. Commissioner Gardner's love for law enforcement has become a family affair. His son is also a Yonkers police officer, we're proud to say. And I'm proud to have Chuck Gardner as the Yonkers Police Commissioner, and even prouder to call him a friend. Chuck, why don't you come up? Congratulations, Chuck. This is one of the recognition, and the city is very proud.
Thank you, Mayor, for those very kind words. Let me begin by saying that I consider it a distinct honor to be recognized by the New York State Shield Association, one of the foremost fraternal organizations, I believe, in the country. And as I proudly accept the award, I ask that you remember its namesake, Captain Terry Tunnock, whom this award is named after. And when I heard about tonight, I did a little research on Captain Tunnock's life and his devotion to law enforcement, and needless to say, I'm honored to accept an award which bears his name. Likewise, I'm humbled to stand before a group of men and women that uses the phrase "cops for cops" as its mission. You know, when the New York State Shield Association coins the term valor and service among its mantras, you immediately realize that it's not just a catchphrase, and that it really means integrity and honor and pride. Pride for those who serve, pride for those who have served, some who made the ultimate sacrifice, but all who have sacrificed to represent a great profession. You know, I spent more than 3 decades as a cop, and I was very proud to be appointed Yonkers Police Commissioner. But I was even more proud when the local newspapers and TV stations started referring to me as the top cop, because first and foremost, I'm a cop. But as you can imagine, life as a commissioner has some advantages. I haven't worked the late tour in a while, and I haven't worked the foot post in quite some time. And although I cannot count speaking engagements among those advantages, tonight's different, because I feel comfortable here. I feel like I'm surrounded by friends and family. I think we're very fortunate in law enforcement to have such a large extended family of so many brother and sister officers. And there are not many professions that can boast the level of support and mutual respect that we have for each other. So I have to tell you that This award is especially meaningful to me because it comes from cops. And please know that, although I stand up here, the credit really goes to the men and women like you, like our street crime unit, and you gentlemen and women who are out there every day putting yourselves in harm's way to protect the people and to do God's work. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I just want to thank my family and friends and colleagues for coming and joining me tonight and supporting me. I want to congratulate my co-honoree, Inspector Harrison, and all of tonight's honorees. And I thank you very much for your support. And lastly but not least, the mayor had to run out, but I want to thank our mayor. We're very fortunate in Yonkers that we have a mayor that really supports the police, and it makes our job so much easier. So again, thank you, and may God bless all of you and keep you safe.
Keep inviting Commissioner back just to talk about the shields, because he stole half of my thunder, 3/4 of everything that Eric and I were going to say later. I'm serious, he did. It's better quotes than I was, Even with but getting into that, Eric touched on it. The history of the shields is about the parents and families, and I mentioned Ann Vendetti, and that's why we started. I mean, what we're here tonight to do is to honor the honorees that we have tonight, but we started really just about the parents and families, because the history is that it's not a negative thing, but the spouse would always get all the attention. As you know, in the case of a horrible line of duty tragedy, it was the spouse. The parents were forgotten. In the late 80s and early 90s, it was a group of guys, and I later had the honor to become part of it, that focused on the parents. And as we got more established, and as the commissioner was nice enough to mention, we got recognized around the state and around the country. We started to branch out and do the Hero of the Month awards, the Purple Heart Distinguished Service Cross, and this is something that it is our honor to do and to continue to do, but it really all began about the families and about the parents. And our next speaker is going to just talk a little bit about his brother. And you may have read about this, it was in the papers recently. The parole hearings came up again about all those involved in the horrible murder of Eddie Byrne. His brother has not stopped for all these years, fighting, and we're lucky in that we have friends like him, and we have other friends, one of which would be the Commissioner of Parole, could make it tonight, Barney Ferguson's son, Jamie Ferguson, who's on top of that and keeps us up to date when these parole hearings come up. We reach out to the family, we write letters, but it really has got to be the family. When you hear from Larry, you'll understand. Here, Larry Byrne.
Good evening, everyone. It is truly a great pleasure and a great honor for me to be here tonight. The Shields is such an incredibly important and fantastic organization. Has been done so much good work for over 2 decades now. So it was really, I was delighted when my good friend Barney Ferguson invited me to join you tonight. So thank you for having me. Although today I'm just a lawyer in private practice in a law firm, I had the privilege earlier in my career to serve for 7 years as a federal criminal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan. I was hired by a young, aggressive U.S. attorney by the name of Rudy Giuliani, who gave me my start in the prosecuting business. And then I moved to the organized crime section with Main Justice in Washington, D.C. And so any chance I get together with old law enforcement colleagues is something I always enjoy. And to see old friends like Ann Vendetti and Barney Ferguson is a great treat. So thank you for having me tonight. I wanted to... The work that you all do, whether you're retired or you're currently serving as a police officer or a law enforcement agent, is so critically important. It's the most important work anyone can do, keeping our communities safe. It's also the most dangerous work, as you all know, anyone can do. And I wanted to talk just a little bit tonight, and I promise just a little bit, even though I am a lawyer, I was thinking recently about how police work, the job of being a cop, has changed so much over the years, over the decades, in many respects, and how in other respects it really hasn't changed at all. And what prompted me thinking about that most recently and I'm going to talk about the parole hearings in a minute, but actually I had my boys out at the range to shoot a couple of weeks ago. And you'd say, well, why would that get you to think about police work? And the reason it got me to think about how the job has changed and how it stayed the same is the 2 pistols I had them firing that day, both of which I own legally with a proper license today as a retired federal prosecutor. The first pistol I had the boys shoot was my dad's, what was referred to in his days as his off-duty revolver. It was a .38 caliber snub-nosed Colt, unique because it was a 6-shot, not a 5-shot. Some of the old-timers in the audience will remember that and maybe even have one of those guns. My dad, when he came home from the Army in Korea after the war, joined the New York City Police Department and graduated from the Academy in 1954. When you graduated from the Academy in those days, you were issued your service revolver, which was a long-barrel, 6-shot, .38 caliber. And a lot of the cops carried a second weapon, often referred to as I was growing up as his off-duty weapon, but it was off-duty was a misname in 2 respects. One, just like today in those days, you were on the job 7 days a week, 24 hours a day in New York City, and you were always expected to carry your shield and your gun. And 2, because it was only a 6-shot, although it was probably not in accordance with official policy of the department at the time, but the statute of limitations has expired and he's got his pension, almost every cop carried a second gun, often on your ankle holster because you didn't wear bulletproof vests in those days when you were out on patrol. And so the boys were shooting that gun and knew that it was their grandfather's gun, who's still alive today. He just turned 79. And although he went on to have a long career as a lawyer as well, his proudest moments are as a police officer and continue to be to this day. And the second gun we were shooting was my brother Eddie's service revolver, which was also a .38 caliber Ruger 6-shot. My brother Eddie served as a New York City police officer from 1986 to 1988, so for all of those what I consider younger faces in the audience today, even some of you who have 20 or 25 years on the job, as recently as 1988 and 1990, the standard issue weapon was a .38 caliber 6-shot revolver. The weapons the drug dealers and the criminals had were much more sophisticated and much more advanced in those days, and one of the things we've made progress in is the equipment and the training and the weapons that we give to our police officers today to protect you and to protect our communities. When my brother first joined the department, in those days there were still 3 police departments in New York City. There was a transit police, a housing police, and the regular NYPD. It wasn't until my old boss, Rudy Giuliani, became mayor that he merged the 3 departments. So when my brother first graduated from the academy, he made it onto the police force off of the transit list. And after serving for slightly more than a year, his name was called on the PD list, and he was sent back to the academy for a couple of weeks of training, and then he was assigned to his NSU. And when he finished that, he was assigned to his first precinct as a rookie police officer. He got the precinct that he chose, his first choice. He very much wanted to be in a busy house, and he was assigned to the 103 precinct in South Jamaica, Queens. Now this was in February of 1988, a very different city, a very different New York region than we live in today. It was at the height of the crack epidemic in New York City. There was a violent crime rampage. The year my brother was assassinated, there were over 2,000 murders, 2,000 homicides in New York City alone. And that didn't account for all of the other crimes that were committed in Westchester, Nassau, and the New York metropolitan area. It was the height of the crime epidemic in New York City and the height of the violent crime epidemic. And there were literally large neighborhoods, housing projects, schools that were controlled by violent drug gangs. My brother, the night he was killed, was assigned to work a fixed post alone. He was sitting in a marked police car guarding the home of a cooperating witness, a citizen, an immigrant actually, from Guyana who'd come to South Jamaica, a hardworking man with his family who did battle with the local drug dealers, called the police and had them arrested, who agreed to cooperate with the Queens DA's office and testify against them when no one in the neighborhood would do so out of fear. And in response, the drug dealers had not only threatened him, but firebombed his house on several occasions. And so the NYPD and the Queens DA's office responded by putting a 24-hour round-the-clock fixed post right across the street from the house, marked police car, always manned by one officer to protect that family until the drug dealers he was testifying against went to jail. Now, on the evening that my brother was killed, he'd only been in the precinct about 3 weeks. He was assigned on the midnight to 8 shift to work that post alone. As I said, there have been a number of changes in how we police and communications, including in 1988, that was before Al Gore claimed to have invented the internet. And so it was called the radio car because your means of communication was the radio in the car. There were no cell phones, there were no Blackberries, there was no email. Beepers were just coming into use, but were very crude. And other than the radio, the means of communication was when the sergeant would come around in the sector car and check on everyone and sign your logbook, as the sergeant had done that night about a half hour before he was killed. As my brother sat alone that night in the car, what no one knew at the time was that about a week before, a very violent drug dealer in the neighborhood by the name of Howard Pappy Mason had been sent back to prison and was going to serve a very long sentence in New York State prison. In response to this, from his prison phone, Mason called his gang and said, they take out one of us, we take out one of them. You got to send a message to the cops, so go kill a cop. Now his gang knew that there was always one officer sitting alone on that post, and they decided that that would be the cop they were going to kill, because they were going to send a message back to the cops. And so in the early morning hours of that evening, they planned, after days of planning, a very well-orchestrated assassination of a young rookie police officer sitting in a marked police car in uniform, guarding the home of a drug witness. One defendant snuck up on the passenger side of the car. My brother was in a canine car at the time, so you couldn't see out the rear window and you couldn't see out the rear view mirror, and tried to distract my brother from one side, while the other two stood blocks away to make sure the sector car was not coming back. And then the shooter snuck up on the driver's side and shot him 5 times at point-blank range as the other perpetrator distracted him. The next morning, truly the city and the nation were shocked by the crime. This was a premeditated assassination of a New York City police officer by an imprisoned drug dealer. And it began a chain of events that continued today that changed how we police, how we train our police officers, how we protect our communities. The killing of any police officer, the assault on any police officer is unacceptable, and particularly the premeditated assassination of a police officer is something that sent shockwaves through the entire city. Even people who weren't pro-police came to the conclusion that if they could kill a police officer, they could and would kill anyone. As I said, the year my brother was assassinated, there were over 2,000 murders in New York City that year. It was a record year. And so it was his service revolver that we were shooting a couple of weeks ago with my boys, when I got to thinking about how policing and the dangerous job of being a police officer, of being a cop, had changed and how it had stayed the same. Whether you take 1954, when my dad got out of the academy, 1988, when my brother was killed in the line of duty, there have been a lot of good changes. Our police officers today are the best trained police officers we've ever had. You're properly equipped, you're properly armed. Our departments are more diverse than they've ever been and more closely reflect the community they police than they've ever been. Crime levels in New York City and in the New York City metropolitan area have fallen to record lows, close to the kinds of record lows that existed when they first started keeping crime statistics when my dad first went on the job. So all of that's been very positive. The communications, obviously, today are much more sophisticated, and all of those have been very positive developments. But as I thought about it, I thought that there are two fundamental things that haven't changed. One is that the work that you do, whether you're retired or whether you're in service today, is the most important work we can do, that anyone can do. Protecting our communities, keeping our communities safe, hearing about the work of our colleagues from Yonkers, hearing about the fabulous work you're going to hear about in a few minutes from our next honorees. There's no more important calling, not just to doing good work, but to preserving the very foundation of our society, to keeping our streets safe for kids, to keeping our communities safe for the elderly. That's why people come to America. That's why my 4 grandparents immigrated here from Italy and Ireland. And that's why people still today come from all over the world to New York City for opportunity. But to have that opportunity, they need to be safe in their communities. And they are much safer today because of the fabulous work that you all do. And we all should thank you for that and recognize you. Fundamental aspect of what you do that hasn't changed, unfortunately, is that when you're on duty and when you're off duty, you are always a split second away from a dangerous and too often deadly encounter or altercation. And while crime rates have dropped and violence has dropped generally and against police officers, we all still have to attend too many police funerals and see too many police officers injured in the line of duty. We need to continue to send an unequivocal message that we will not tolerate any act of violence against our police officers, against our law enforcement officers. And we need to continue to send that message today, which is why the parole hearings my family went through this fall were very important, not only for us, but for the larger community, and the larger law enforcement community was incredibly supportive of the effort. 4 people who murdered my brother were convicted in state court, and at the time that they were convicted, the maximum sentence under New York State law was only 25 years to life. One of the things that changed after my brother Eddie was killed is that New York State, for a certain category of violent crime, brought in a real life without parole sentence. So now people for that type of crime will go to jail for their whole lives, but these guys are under the old law. So they had their first parole hearings this fall, and unfortunately, under the New York State system, they will get parole hearings every 2 years for the rest of their lives. And although they've been in jail for 24 years, they're only in their 40s. And so the parole hearings in particular this year served as a good reminder for so many people of the dangerous job you do and the need for us to be vigilant in protecting our police officers. And I won't bore you with all the details, but you should take comfort in knowing that the number of current and former elected public officials, from Mayor Bloomberg to Commissioner Kelly, to all of the former living New York City police commissioners, to one of my mentors, Louis Freeh from the U.S. Attorney's Office, who went on to be director of the FBI, to Rudy Giuliani, all wrote letters to the parole board. Many of them saw the events of my brother's death firsthand. Others, like Mayor Bloomberg, were in the private sector but came to learn about them. And they all had the same common theme, which is not only was this crime a terrible crime and that these guys should not get parole, but these guys should not get parole because the case is about a lot more than Eddie Byrne. The case is about making sure people understand that they can never attack a police officer and never engage in this kind of crime. to keep all of our police officers safe today and in the future, we need to make sure that these people are denied parole now and in the future. And happily, 3 of the 4 have been denied parole, and 1 more is up later this month, and we hope that he will be denied parole again, and then we will get ready to do it all over again in 2 years and every 2 years. But the record from this parole hearing is very, very important and will be there forever. At the time that my brother was killed, he was a rookie police officer, and I was a rookie prosecutor, and I went on to have the privilege to serve for 7 years as a federal prosecutor. My brother, who was killed, very much wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps, which is why he entered the NYPD. My next brother in line was in the Marine Corps at the time, and when he returned from combat service in the Gulf, joined another important law organization called the FBI. He's been an FBI agent for 23 years and still does that work today, chasing violent drug gangs in the metropolitan area. And my youngest brother, who was only a freshman in college at the time, went on to law school and served in the Queen's DA's office, and then moved over to prosecute securities fraud cases at the SEC's Division of Enforcement, where he is today. So we've all, in one way or another, stayed in law enforcement, and we all recognize the tremendous sacrifices you can make, the tremendous dangers that you pose, and the enormously important work that you do. So I promised I would be short. I talked longer than I wanted to, for which I apologize. I want to end really just with 3 thoughts. First of all, thank you again for inviting me here tonight. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. For our honorees, some of whom haven't even come up yet, they have such distinguished careers of public service, of accomplishment, of dedication, whether it's the units or the individuals in their departments. So I congratulate them, and I thank all of you for your service to our communities. And to all of you, I thank you for the incredibly professional, incredibly important, highly dangerous job you do every day, and thank you for your service to our communities. Thank you very much.